All right, good morning. We're starting day 2 of Roasting 101 with Mill City Roasters today. We're doing something a little bit more exciting, which is cupping and grading, I believe. So I'm all set up here. And maybe I'm gonna have like a top-down shot for you guys to see what's going on here as well. So I'll set that up. Oh, I have a question. Hi, Derek. So could you break down your, okay, so here's what I understand for your preheating structure. So you turn the roaster on in the morning. Now, my first question is, when you're turning on, are you going to 100% on your fuel? Or are you going to 50% or whatever? Because what happens with me, if I go to 100%, okay. We're gonna grind the coffees, have a purge, and then I have 2 of the same coffee that we're going to cup right now. Move, Coop. Nope. Welcome back. We are going to do the homework, which is to cup the rest of these profiles. So we already cupped profile 1, which you saw. We have profile 2 right there. 3, it's a little cluttered right now. 3, 4, and 5, which is this mystery one. So, oh, can't see that. The goal is to, after watching Derek roast about 3 times, going through what looked like were not ideal roasts to me, we're supposed to figure out from this information and cupping all of these what this could be. So we're just going to try to figure out, based on our knowledge, what happened here. And it was my plan to release these videos at the same time, in real time, but I feel like a lot of, not a lot, but some students are watching my videos at the same time. So I don't want to influence their tasting. So what I'm gonna do is wait till Friday, tomorrow, and then drop this video, okay? So I'll make an announcement on IG if you were expecting a video today on Thursday. But I don't want to influence. We talked about a lot about creating sort of a sensory deprivation where when you're cupping, so that when you do cup your coffees, you're really only tasting that, right? We're trying to eliminate any variable that could get in the way of you tasting what is really there. So I want to remove my bias from whoever's watching my videos at this point. So I'll post on Friday, okay? Alrighty. Because there's definitely a couple of things that I saw during the roast that I was like, you know, already my preconceptions about how Derek was roasting will influence these profiles, but we really won't be able to tell, like with anything, until we get into the cup, what's in the cup. Okay, so I'm gonna set up everything right now. I'll time lapse through this all, and then we'll get to cupping each one of these. I'll record everything on these cool little grading sheets provided by Mill City. I'll give my take, I'll put it out there, and then, which will be kind of cool, like I've already recorded all my stuff. You guys will be able to see what happens on the following day. And then on Friday, I'll make comparisons. Okay? Alrighty. Okay. So as far as these are going for me right now, like, I feel like they're all not ideal roasts. I feel like something about them is slightly off, but that they're not terrible. They're all not terrible. They're all very drinkable. I feel like the middle one is my favorite out of the bunch, even though it's so small that I can't tell. And it could be because my own tools are limited. Like, I always have one nostril clogged, so I can never really smell completely. I can never really taste completely. So there's that. Okay, so take that into consideration. Every time I smell the fragrance, which is dry coffee, I always pick up some tomato soup. It just kind of like never fails. I always smell tomato soup for some reason. This one, which is profile number 4, was kind of meaty, more meaty, more onion. It reminds me of a Filipino dish we call bistek. So meat and onions in soy sauce. It smelled like that. The aroma for all 3 of these, when I was non-agitated and agitated, was like just very papery, very flat. I couldn't really pick up anything. Cardboard. This one sort of started to smell a little buttery. This is number 2. So it's 2, 3, 4 like this. In my notes, they all kind of start. This one, I think I started over here. I feel like, no, I started here, right? So, because my first note is here. I forget where I started. Anyway, I remember this one distinctly on my first sip was very, like on the smokier side. Like I could taste the smoke in it. So that was kind of weird. And then this one in the middle was bright. It was just like real bright. And then this one was like kind of bright for sure, but like more nuttier, more rounder, I guess. There was a slight smokiness on the finish on this one. I like it. It's not terrible, but I feel like I'm tasting something that's a little off, but I don't really know what it is. Like I said, the medium one, I feel like it has like kind of like more fruit in it. I feel like I could taste some more fruit stuff. Like it's the juiciest one out of all of them. That's what kind of happens in my mouth, like kind of salivate a little bit more. And I feel like it's the brightest. And as I'm tasting it as it cools, right? I tasted it when it was like piping hot, and now that it's cooling, this one's getting the brightest for me. This one's coming through. It was at first very flat, and now that it's cooling down, it's getting brighter as it's cooling down. I felt one note at first, number 4. So now I've talked a little bit. Let's give it another whirl and see. All right. Okay, interesting. So how these have cooled, not to room temperature or anything, still a little warm. This one is brighter than this one now. This one feels more like it's settled down, it's mellowed out. This one is even more mellowed out, flatter, more one note. I'm gonna taste it again when it's like cold. But that's it. So in this lesson, to sum up for day 2, where's my notebook? Besides the cupping, which was, you know, really cool, really fun to get into, I learned a lot of really applicable things for when I actually go to roast. And a lot of my questions for this day were concerning the preheat and managing heat, because it's manual. You're there, with my roaster anyway, I'm in there manually turning the valve in very small increments, just a hair here or there, just kind of feeling it. And it feels like I make a tiny adjustment for a big result or something like this. So I just wanted to kind of clarify it with them. And that's why this type of class is great, because if you're already roasting and say you have a little bit of experience under your belt, like like myself, you can take what you've already done. Maybe you've developed some bad habits like I have, and really kind of clarify them with people who actually are roasting a lot more than you are. And it's also to note that even though, as I'm finding out, I don't take their word as like the Bible or anything. You still will have to go and find out for yourself. That's what I'm learning. You know, even a professional, like a consultant like Scott Rayo versus a production roaster like Derek at Mill City, they're going to have two different perspectives on how they look at roasting. So you need to consider that when you're asking questions of people, as I am considering when I ask a question of somebody. What's your process about this? And then you have to think about your reality, and then try to execute that. Does that make sense? So I think it's really important as a roaster to still be conscious about what your reality is, what your situation is. Not to be so, don't be blind. You know, you still need to use your senses. You still need to use all your wits about you. Keep your wits about you when you're doing whatever you're doing. Because you're the only one who knows what's going on with you. And that's, I say this because now I'm getting a lot of questions coming to me, and I'm like, yeah, I did this because this kind of worked for me in my situation. So I always want you guys to consider, what is your situation? Try, when you ask questions, to be very specific, and take it as like, okay, I see how you're doing that. I'm gonna take and grab what works for me and put that in and try it, right? And have an open mind and try it and see if that works for me. And maybe I'm gonna have to tweak it a little bit, and that's okay. Okay, so I'm just just putting that out there, because as you learn, you need to be kind of flexible and moldable, and know where this information is coming from and what their perspective is when they give advice or give suggestion, or give instruction. They have their perspective, where they're coming from when they answer you or when they guide you and things like this. But in the end, you're gonna have to do some work. Okay, so I want to sound off a little bit, a couple of notes that I wrote down right here as well. Just some things that kind of stood out to me. This was very cool. I do this already, but if you didn't already know, to keep green and roasted containers separate from each other and clean from each other. Reason being is that green coffee, as it was explained to me, I didn't know this. Good thing I keep things separate. Can carry allergens, can carry all kinds of stuff. So you don't want to cross-contaminate anything. Nothing should be on the floor. So I think there's a couple times you guys see me roast where I have my bags on the floor of the garage, and I try to keep everything as clean as possible, vacuuming and things like this, but just for good measure, start to keep everything off the floor. If you're doing any kind of cold brew with cold, you're using cold temperatures, that could be potentially dangerous, and you need to be even more cognizant about cross-contamination, because there's no heat application in that process that could kill any bacteria, right? We should all be getting our food handlers card as roasters, because we're handling food for consumption, so I will do that. I was planning on doing all this stuff anyway. Okay, preheating. So like I was saying, I got to ask very specific questions about preheating during this time. Basically, I'm going to change coming up to charge temperature, and I'm going to preheat well above my charge and come down. And the way to do that is not by squirting the water bottle into the drum, which I was thinking, I was like, isn't this kind of like cleaning the drum? Because like if I were to clean any one of my pots and pans, and I'll heat it up first and put some water on it, because I know that heat is gonna help kind of scrape and clean the surface, right? So the water bottle is there for emergencies only. If you have a fire coming out of the drum or something like this, or you have a chaff fire, that's when you use it, and not for coming down to temp. So this is very interesting, because potentially I'm creating a very inconsistent way of preheating the drum, which means I'm not being consistent, right? So that was a big eye-opener for me in terms of heating well above. And the only reason why I was doing coming up to temperature, because I went to Scott Rayo's class, he's like, oh, yeah, come up to temperature. But again, like I said, I don't fault him for that. It's whatever, I forget why his perspective is to come up to temp and charge. And I may be speaking out of turn here, but I got that idea somewhere, right? And now I'm going to change it. So I'm going to heat to probably about 450 or something like this, and then turn off the gas and let it come down to my charge temp and charge then. You know, little things like this, you know, you don't, I want to systemize everything and be consistent about everything. Okay, if you don't have cupping bowls like this, standardized sizes like this, got a little tip from Lauren, which is to get whatever you're going to use and then say these are going to be my cupping bowls, even though they're not something like this. Put it on a scale, fill it all the way up, see what that number is in grams, and then divide it by 18, and that'll be your dose for that particular container. I thought that was pretty cool advice. Again, I talked about perception. Lauren talked about perception influencing your ability to taste. So she was like, you know, you've got to really create a deprived area for your perception so that you will only taste the coffee and the water and the grounds in this container. And so no music playing, you know, all the same size. Don't eat any spicy, fatty foods, or, you know, anything that could influence you and get in the way of you tasting what's actually here. Try to take that out. Okay. And then try to be in the same time of day. I just did it whenever because it's convenient, because I have other things to do. But if you're trying to be very professional about it, you're trying to be as accurate with your cupping as possible, you want to try to do everything the same, everything. Okay. That's what they said. Oh yes, the cooler the coffee, and it tastes better, that's a good sign. So as coffee starts to cool down after you brew it and it starts to taste better, that's a great sign. If it starts to taste bad, even though it tastes good when it was hot, that's a bad sign. I thought that was pretty cool, because that's what we're doing today is cupping, and we want to not judge a coffee based on one facet of the whole experience. We want to judge a coffee or grade a coffee by the whole experience. Okay. So, those were all of the main things that I wrote down. Just a couple of little technical notes for myself in terms of roasting. And that was day 2. So, subscribe for more. I'm going to record the last day of the class and then do I'll just sum up everything on the last day of class in that video as well. So this series is not too long. But yeah, that was fun. This was a lot more, you know, interactive and a lot more doing things. So tomorrow I think we're going to get more into grading, which we'll be using this thing, I think, and then our little, this thing, pouring green out onto here and being like, what is it, right? So we're going to do that tomorrow. I'm excited for that. We almost forgot it. Okay. Okay. Smells like paper. Paper. Cardboard. Lauren said there's no wrong answers. And kind of sweet. Somebody's applauding me in the back. Kind of sweet. Okay. All right. Should be cool enough now. It finishes bright. And it's very juicy. And I get a lot of like, it definitely tastes more fruit. Like that apricot. Cherry. That's a better fruit. A cherry. Like the back of the tongue on the sides kind of puckers up. Not in a bad way, but in a nice way that I like. I like brightness. The mid palate is kind of flatter. Bright, juicy, flavor, and nuance. What did I say? Cherry? Some sweetness. It's more like a bittersweet. I feel like I'm getting better a little bit as I've just done 5 today, you know? So, dipped it in the wrong thing. You've got to just do things a lot so you can get better at them. I really like it. There's a bittersweet, like a very high percent dark chocolate or something, but then cherries. Pretty syrupy body, I'd say. But juicy. Juicy, very juicy. That's my overall comment, and I like it. Juicy, I like it. That's the extent of my cupping skills. It's very, poor right now, but I want to get better at it. I mean, I know the difference between like very flat and then too bright and too sour, so I think at least on that front, I'm getting started. This feels to me like an everyday drinker for me. Like it's very good. I like it. Nothing wrong with it. The mid palate, though, I think there's something going on in the mid palate. I think I do taste a bit of roastiness at the end. I'm thinking, because we're supposed to figure out with this coffee, we're supposed to figure out what happened in the roast. So this is, we're going to require a little bit more thinking. I'm thinking it's probably like a normal green to yellow. Pretty normal, like either 4 or 5 minutes in there. Because it's bright. If it's bright, that's mean it was hit with a good amount of heat in the beginning of the roast. Okay, I'm gonna make my little notes here. So this is my little prediction. It's bright, which means lots of heat in beginning. And probably hit yellow at like 5:30, and then the Maillard, the mid-phase, I probably think that was a little bit shorter because I'm not tasting a lot of like other nuance other than cherries and like chocolate, which is like a very basic, I guess, sort of notes. But it's totally drinkable, like it's totally good. Maybe like a 9:30 first crack, I'm guessing. And I'm thinking I'm trying to see if they tweak the air a little bit. Because there's like a roastiness on the end, I would think that maybe they're not cranking the air all the way up, right? They're not flushing the drum clear of any smoke. Maybe some smoke is lingering. Maybe as it's roasting, Derek's not adjusting the airflow at all. So I'm saying maybe like a low to medium airflow. Because I just taste it kind of slightly. If it's not off-putting, it's not bad. And then sometimes I don't taste it at all, so I don't know. All right. And then the last part of the phase, last part, I don't know what they call it now. They have so many names. There's no consensus. The last part of the phase, which is the language that Derek uses is, he'll go 2 minutes post crack, like this. And that's what I've been doing, but I don't say that to myself mentally. I'm just like, first crack, it was at 8:30. I'm gonna go 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 drop. That's kind of how like I think that in my terms of like my mental language to myself, that I'm adding 2 minutes on for that last bit in the last phase. And then depending on what I see in the sight glass and in the trier and smelling and all this stuff, try to use all my senses, then I'll drop. So I don't always drop 2. I try to verify and validate what I want in the sight glass and in the trier, and then I'll drop. But it's at least 2 minutes, at least. If I go maybe 10, 20, 30 seconds more, it's because maybe I made some sort of time mistake or something earlier in the roast. So that was just interesting. I just wanted to share that. He'll that's the way he thinks. 2 minutes post first crack, like this, like that's what he says. Okay. I'm thinking he dropped it. He did his 2 minute post first crack, and then he dropped it. But because of the airflow, that's where I think the roasty toastiness is coming from. It's getting brighter as it's cooling, which is a good sign, right? Like I talked about. It's a good sign when the coffee still is tasting better as it's cooling down. Like it's more flavor starting to reveal itself because extreme temperatures mask flavor, right? The same thing with beer and stuff like this. You have a cold beer, you can mask a shitty beer if you have it really cold, So same thing with coffee, as I learned here. Okay, so that's what I think what happened in the roast. It looked like air was not being manipulated to the best, but it's still very juicy. Like it's still a very good coffee, and I feel like they're still hitting all the important notes with the fuel and with time. But the fact that there's a roastiness to it makes me think it may be an airflow thing, but I don't know. Let's see. I have no idea. My cupping skills are very poor. So that's my prediction. We're gonna find out tomorrow. and see if I got anything right or if I got everything totally wrong. Okay, cool. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Subscribe for more stuff like this. We'll see you.